All these cases of terrorism that have been solved to the degree that they have is because we already have these people are known to the authorities in each of these countries. It was true in Paris, it was true in Orlando, it was true in Boston. It keeps being true, but they are not doing the surveillance work that they should. They're not collecting and connecting the dots. So, for example, in 9/11, we knew what the hijackers were planning to do. We knew several of them what they were, where they were pilot training. That information was available to the NSA on signals alone because they had penetrated the house in Yemen, and they knew that was Bin Laden's conduit to the hijackers. And then eventually, the NSA, when they arrived in San Diego, the two of them, and the NSA did not give those signals, did not give any information over to the FBI, not one. So FBI separately picks up the hijackers in San Diego with with an informant, and they don't do anything with it. Meanwhile, the FBI is getting signals from Phoenix, Arizona, from Minneapolis about another terrorist who's taking pilot training and so forth and so on. All these reports go to Washington, they get lost. Separately, the CIA has enormous amount of signals, and they send them to the White House, this, that. The White House doesn't listen. So here we have a situation where three major intelligence agencies gather enough to connect all the dots and have these people surveyed with limited surveillance, and it would have worked. They would have found them. This happens again and again. Why mass terrorism? This is what Snowden is asking. It's not about terrorism. It's not about terrorism. He makes the point that data mining, this degree of data mining with satellites up 22,000 miles in space with an antenna on them the size of the Eiffel Tower, they're not there for terrorism. They're there to watch everything and everybody and see how we can benefit, which is to say, you watch a country, you see problems, you watch a corporation, you see issues, and you use that information to advance your own cause, which is, in many cases, in America's case, regime change. Regime change has hit us constantly, again and again. It was used in Iraq, it's being used in Syria, the concept of regime change. It was recently used in Brazil. It's trying to be used against Venezuela. It was used in Libya. This is a technique that we use. We don't go to war, we go for regime change, and regime change is done very subtly. Protests, elections, excite the population. Ukraine is another case. Be careful, that's what Snowden is saying. Be aware of the power that this kind of surveillance gives one nation. It has the money or the technology that the United States has in this regard, but they can learn fast. Another thing you see in the film, I'm going to go on a bit because it's important to make this point. None of you took my bait when I was talking about surveillance, but the other thing you see in this film is cyber warfare, which is very troubling. The United States began cyber warfare in 2007 against Iran. They put the Stuxnet virus into their centrifuges and blew them up. The Iranians rebuilt them within 6 months, but the virus was picked up on by many people, including a researcher in the US. They found out what it was. The United States had launched it with Israel. And that virus, those viruses, or combinations of, are very dangerous. They've been used ever since. We put malware in different countries. The United States, in Snowden's case, it was in Japan, he found out about malware. He says in the film, I hope some of you heard it, he says, we wanted Japan to tap all its population. They refused because of their laws. We did it anyway, and in case they were no longer our allies, we planted malware in their civilian infrastructure, their dams, their railroad stations, anything possible. There would be lights out in Japan if they ever turned against us. Then he says we did it in Mexico, we're doing it in Mexico, doing it in Brazil, and he mentions Austria, and he doesn't go into the details of which countries, and I don't know all the countries, but I think, knowing the American way, that not only is Belgium tapped because it's one of the major information centers in Europe, but I'm sure the major allies, some of the major allies are also malware was implanted. This is like putting landmines. This is an act of war. It's a form of warfare that they're putting in the country that's supposedly an ally. I think I'm trying to describe to you a vast global surveillance system of data mining that is very dangerous to the world because it creates the possibility of war, more war through regime change. And that's what we're seeing in the Middle East, if you think about it, in any depth. And don't go along just with the official policy, the official propaganda line of the U.S. Western agencies.